Okay guys, so more stuff on the quick sampler. Now, quick sampler is now the engine behind Drum Machine Designer, and therefore we can exploit the features of quick sampler to do some really cool stuff with our drum patterns when we're using Drum Machine Designer. Let's look at that quickly. So here I've got a instrument track with Drum Machine Designer on it, the 808 kit. There is a step sequencer pattern playing and triggering the 808 kit. Okay, now close the pattern. If we actually look at the Drum Machine Designer, this pattern is on the main Drum Machine Designer track with the Drum Machine Designer, not on any of the sub tracks for the actual individual drums, right? And Drum Machine Designer acts as like a filter, right? So any patterns on the main Drum Machine Designer track, or if you play pads or keys with the main Drum Machine Designer track selected, the pads will only respond to their allocated incoming note. And these are set to general MIDI standard, so the kick is always C1, the snare is always D1, the clap's always D sharp 1, the three hi-hats are always the black keys, F sharp 1, G sharp 1, A sharp 1. Right, that's general MIDI drum note standard. And every drum box in the world and every drum software in the world responds on those MIDI notes for those drums. It's like a standard, and it's done that way so that any patterns that anyone creates will play back on every drum box with the kick always playing the kick and the snare always playing the snare, etc. Right? So if you choose the main Drum Machine Designer track, the kick only responds to C1. The snare only responds to D1. The clap only responds to D sharp 1, etc. But if you look, each pad has an outgoing note, and if I choose the kick pad, there's the quick sampler behind the pad. So it will only respond to C1, but when it receives a C1 note, it will output it on G0, which is the root key for the sampling quick sampler for this pad, to play back the sample at its original pitch. Okay. Now you can change the output note so that the incoming C1 kick note will trigger the quick sampler sample lower in pitch or higher in pitch. Right? Right, you can do that with any drum, but we can exploit this ability, or rather we can exploit this fact that there's an individual quick sampler living behind every pad, because if we open up the stack and we address the track for a drum directly, then we're bypassing this general MIDI incoming note thing where, you know, the kick only responds on C1 and the snare only responds on D1. Right? If I choose the kick track, now I'm addressing the track for the kick directly with the quick sampler on it. This is the quick sampler for the kick, right? And so therefore, if I address this kick track directly, the quick sampler on it has the kick sample loaded in, but we know that every sample loaded into quick sampler is mapped automatically across the entire key range. So if I choose the direct kick track, I'm addressing the quick sampler with the kick sample indirectly, and I can therefore play it across the entire keyboard, the entire range. So we can exploit that to do tuned patterns for individual drums. And by the way, once we got that, there's more things we can do. I'm going to show you some other stuff you can do where we exploit quick sampler to do some other groovy stuff, right? But let's look at the pitch thing first. So there's the pattern triggering Drum Machine Designer through the filter of the general MIDI pads, right? The kick only responds on C1, etc. So what I do is copy that pattern across. I'm going to convert it to a MIDI region. Now I've got regular MIDI notes, and then I'm going to put that onto the kick track. Okay, now in the original pattern here, I'll just mute the kick. Okay, and I'll mute that whole pattern now. Okay, so I've got the pattern copied to MIDI here. All the notes are there from the drum pattern, but they're now living on the kick track. And as the quick sampler on this kick track responds to all MIDI notes right across the entire range of the keyboard, every single one of these notes from the original pattern they're all going to trigger the kick, but at different pitches. Etc. So what I'll do is just take out everything but the kick pattern. And as long as these kick notes are put on the root key for the kick, it'll now play back exactly the same as it did from here. Right? So, but we've got the kick muted in this pattern, so we're going to have this pattern playing on the main drum machine designer track, playing the hats, claps and snare, and this pattern here is going to play the kicks directly into the kick quick sampler, which means now I can tune these notes to anything I want. Oh yeah, mate. So you can do all that, right? But you can go further. We can exploit other aspects of the quick sampler. Here's the quick sampler on the actual kick track. Now at the moment, like with all the quick samplers behind every single drum pad, it's set to one shot mode. One shot mode means that, let me put my grid into 16ths. All the notes in the step sequencer, if you look, they've been transferred to this MIDI pattern. They're a 16th in length. Now one shot means that a tiny little note, no matter what the length, will trigger the sample to play all the way to the end. But we can now switch the kick to classic mode, which means that it'll only play back as long as the notes. So now these notes, which are short little 16th notes, will just play a little blip of the kick. They'll only play about that far along its length and then it'll stop. Let me just turn it up a little bit. Now, once you put it into this classic mode where note length determines how long the sample plays back for, you want to change your envelope here, right? Look, let me just show you this. The envelope, the amp envelope, is set to AHDSR like this. That's how it is for having drums in one shot. But we switch to classic where note lengths now determine how long the sample plays back, and we want to switch this to ADSR. Now I get my decay node, bring it up as far as it'll go, and then right across hard to the left. Okay, now when these notes trigger, when these little notes will play the sample about that far down its length, and it'll just cut off like a brick wall. Now that may be an effect you want, in which case you've got it, but if you want them to sort of decay away a little bit at the end, just bring out the release. So I'll give it just between a half and a quarter of a second release. And now these little blip notes are going to play that kick sample to about there, and then the sound will decay away at 352 milliseconds, which, as I said, is between a quarter and a half second. So they're still little tiny short blips, just that much of the sample is getting triggered, but then it decays away and they don't sound so unnatural and gated. Unless you want them to sound unnatural and gated. That's up to you, right? But now we've got all that set, we can now make the notes in our kick pattern different lengths. So I can have this one a really long note like that. And however long the note is, that's how long the sample will play. So at the end of that note, you saw the play got to about here. There, about there. But we got enough release here. I'm putting a second, just under a second of release. So the sample plays through with that note length to about there, and then the last little bit will decay away with that release. Now that long release also means these shorter blip notes are going to release longer, so let's bring it in a little bit. And then they start to become shorter again. You've got to find a balance between note length and release. Right, so let's do it up about 300 and something milliseconds. And make this note even longer so it plays even further down that length of that sample. and then make that a really long one. And that one as well. But make this one a bit shorter. And that could be whatever you want. A little tiny blip, or make it longer. Let's make it a tiny blip and see what happens. Yeah, you know, whatever you like. Or it could last a bit longer than 16. Now, the other thing we can do is, we've switched to classic, so note lengths now determine the length of the sample, but the polyphony for all these quick samplers for each drum is set to 1. It'll just play back one sample triggering at a time. If we can increase the polyphony to 2, 3 or whatever, now 2 notes will play back at the same time. I mean, I could overlay that note to have a really long length that overlaps this one triggering, and you'll hear this one decay as this one triggers. This one here won't cut that one out because we've got 2 note poly. Now they modulate strangely at that point, but if you get the pitch right so they modulate in some way that's harmonic, I don't know. You know, you just got to mess with the tuning until you get it right, or just don't have it on poly. It's up to you. But the point is, you can do that, and the notes can overlap. Let's do it like that. Yeah, that's just an option, right? Okay, so let's just have it normal. There you go. So now we got long booming kick, little short kick, a couple of little shorts, longish, long, etc. And we got the ability going into classic to have note length determine the length of our samples, how long it plays back. I want that longer though. You know, this could be anything you want. You know what I mean? This thing is just brilliant, man. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah? So you can do all that. It's just amazing. And you can do this with, you know, any drum. You just address the drum on its own track, and then you're addressing the quick sampler directly, and you're bypassing the Drum Machine Designer pad connected to the sampler, to the quick sampler living behind the pad. Man, it's absolutely fantastic. I'll show you something else that you can do using this technique. Let's mute that. Okay, here, let's close that. Here, and open this up, I've got a deep bass house Drum Machine Designer kit on an instrument track, and there's another step sequencer pattern. It's 4 bars long, and it's doing a straightforward boom-tish, boom-tish. Put the appropriate tempo. There we go. And then this is the second half, the next 2 bars, and I've taken the snares out, right? So what I do now is I'll go into the stack. There is the actual snare track. So that's the snare track. Yeah. Okay. So on this track, I've put a climbing up snare fill, but it's addressing the snare directly. So these notes are going to be pitched chromatically, playing that snare, which if you address it directly on its own track, on its own quick sampler directly on its own track, you can play it across the entire keyboard. Yeah. So I can do a pitched up fill. Let's have it not solo. Here we go. You know, all that stuff is mental. Go back into my pattern and just take out those kicks for that last bar, maybe. You know, all that stuff, man, it's brilliant. I'll double up my kicks over this bit to reinforce that snare. Yeah, you can do all that. You can do all that. You know? Man, it's just epic. I mean, I don't have 909 toms in this kit. But if we change the kit to a 909 kit, where are we? 909, 909. Come on. Here we go. Right. Okay, that's the clap now. Let's put it on the snare. And the pattern's not triggering the right notes anymore. Where's my kick, snare? Okay. Oh, come on. Yeah, so I'll just put those there instead. Okay. All that stuff. Oh yeah, but we should have some 909 toms now. Should have. Here they are. Look, low tom. There's a low tom, R&B tom. Now, it's a classic thing in house to play. Yeah, to play melodic 909 tom pattern, so I can just choose that track and bash one in. It'd probably be pretty crap, but I'm not practiced, so here we go. 2, 3, 4. You know, you can put in your pitch melodic tom patterns. Let's just quantize that. Hopefully it'll work. You know, all that stuff. It's just fantastic. Fantastic. Well, let me quickly undo that. And if I want to, there's the tom track. There's its quick sampler. Open a quick sampler, put it in classic mode and change my envelope. And now I can make longer or shorter tom notes. It doesn't look like the sample's very long, so that won't be possible. Well, but if you had a longer tom sample, you could do that. You could have short tom notes and long tom notes by just switching it to classic, giving it some release, and as much as you want, and then going into the pattern, you know, making some of them. Yeah, what's that doing there? Yeah, that's. And you know, making some of the notes long and some of the notes short, and then you can have doom, 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 whatever you like. You know, you just need a longer 909 tom sample. All the rest of it, yeah. I mean, look, you know, the stuff you can do. Let's just bring that back so it's not for the fill half. The stuff you can do is just bonkers. Absolutely incredible. Stop, mate. I'm telling you, it was. What's that? Bloody great aeroplane going over. I mean, it was a stroke of genius for Apple to put Quick Sampler behind every pad of Drum Machine Designer. You know, yeah, the old Ultra Beat behind Drum Machine Designer was great, but now we've got Quick Sampler behind every individual pad of Drum Machine Designer, unless it's doing a drum synth, because you can put a drum synth on any pad to do drum synthesis on a pad, and mix and match drum synthesis pads with sample pads. But now that we've got this quick sampler for every pad, we can play our individual drums across the entire keyboard. We can switch to classic for the triggering and make note lengths determine how long each drum note plays back for. We can play melodic patterns. We can do tuned kick drum patterns, all that stuff. I mean, just quickly to show you, if I now go to that more sort of, I'm crap at doing grime patterns, I suppose, really, but this more sort of hip-hoppy, grimy, so people out there are going to go, it's rubbish, mate, you're crap at doing that, because there is that thing in that scene that everyone takes the piss out of everyone else's beats. Right, if I just go into the Drum Machine Designer now, and even though the kick is being played from its own pattern on the track for the kick, it doesn't matter the controls here. For the kick, the pad controls are still going to affect the kick. So I'll just take the high cut. I'll just roll off the top end. And now it's a much softer, almost like a bass sound. less of a click at the start, right? Sounds more like a bass synth almost. So, you know, you can do all that stuff. Right, if we hit the no play bug again. Yeah, we have. There's the no play bug. It's back. But thank goodness I finished the tutorial. Yeah, this is the no play bug. Apple know about it. In fact, I'm not going to say much about it, but I received an email from the Logic team, a manager on the Logic team last night. And I've now got a direct contact straight into the Logic team, basically, at Apple. And they know about this stop play bug. Look, I mean, as soon as it starts happening, it just will not play. Well, it was play here, but I'll put it in the cycle range. No, will it play now? It's something to do with the cycle range. See, it'll play here where there's no patterns. We'll put it over anywhere where there's a pattern. It won't play. You hit play and it triggers and stops. Anyway, there you go. But I'll finish the tutorial. So, more epicness from Quick Sampler, but this time as the engine behind Drum Machine Designer. I mean, are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
I'm going to start putting those back into my videos now more often. So there you go. There's some great, juicy, groovy stuff to do with Quick Sampler, but working as the engine for each pad of Drum Machine Designer. It was, as I said, a stroke of genius that Apple put that Quick Sampler as the engine behind each Drum Machine Designer pad. It really was. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope it gave you some ideas. Please subscribe and put on notifications if you want to get a heads up for all content that we add. But more importantly than subscribing, or just as importantly, please get the word out. And let's try and get the channel to grow even more. You know, any social media or forums you use, pass the word around. Put links up if there's videos you think are cool, etc., etc. And let's try and build the channel more and more, yeah? So I hope that's cool. And it's given you some ideas. And I'll see you for the next one.